Here we are. It's good to be back. It was an eventful weekend. I hear there was some kind of crazy stuff went on here too while I was gone. I don't know. I got some reports about some crazy stream Saturday night. I still think the results might have been rigged, but I don't know. I don't know. People are saying I'm hearing things. Yeah, not too many mountains here in in the middle of Burbank. No, with my family we had a good weekend. I'm not coming back nearly as rested as I had hoped. Okay, I can challenge for a rematch, but not a recount. All right. That's true. That makes sense. Little kids especially do this thing where when they're sleeping in a new location, they don't sleep. So we just had very long nights, but it's fine. It was nice. We went up to the Lake Arrowhead area, which is about, it should only be about an hour and a half drive, but it took us a little over 2 hours getting there. Actually, we got back pretty quickly yesterday, but it was very nice. You're supposed to grow out of that. You're supposed to, but yeah, it was nice. We just looked at trees pretty much. We drove directly from our house here to, you say cabin, but it was essentially just a house. We drove directly to that house, and all we ever did was walk outside and walk around in the woods. We didn't see another soul. We didn't go anywhere. It was very, very secure, very safe. All right, are we ready, folks, to finish this book today? We've got a little ways to go. Zardoz, I just saw that before I logged on. That's awesome. I love that set of Terminators are so good. Okay, so we're in book 14. We are so close to the end. And let's see. So we're reading about Aeneas, the Trojan hero who has survived Troy and is on his way home. We're going to skip. Okay, so we're going to get back to the pilgrimage of Aeneas resumed. Because, of course, as always, Ovid takes all these meandering paths and takes breaks from stories and comes back to them. So let's see. They're off again. They made for the woody coast where shadowed Tiber roils yellow to the sea, and there Aeneas won a new bride and kingdom. There was warfare with a fierce race, and violent Turnus battled to keep his promised bride. So these are all scenes from the Aeneid, also just from the mythology of Aeneas, and it's very cool stories. Again, we'll talk about the Aeneid again soon, but Turnus is a very important antagonist in that story. Welcome everyone. Thank you. I am back. Let's see. Etruria clashed in arms with Latium. Victory was hard to win through that long doubt, and both sides needed to go for foreign aid, though many guarded Rutulian and Trojan camps. So essentially it's Etruria, which is where we get the Etruscan, against Latium, which is going to be where Rome is. It's complicated. Aeneas found help from Evander. Venulus in vain appealed to Diomedes. That Greek hero had built a city, Arpi, where he ruled lands that had come to him as a marriage portion. But when, at Turnus's order, Venulus asked for his aid, he said he could not grant it. He had too little strength. He would not risk either himself or his bride's people in battle. All his own warriors were gone. I will tell you the truth, he said, much as I hate to tell it. Believe me, these are no trumped-up excuses. So we're getting the story of Diomedes. I am reinvigorated from the mountain air, yes. Oh, that's an interesting question. Very short little side note. So I have allergies, because of course I do, especially to animals, like people's pets and things. Yes, I am allergic to my own cat, but I take medication for that. That makes it mostly fine. So we get up to this house where we're staying, and very soon after we got there, I started getting issues, and then like my throat kind of closes up a little bit. And it's almost like wheezing, like asthma. It's fun, and so it was like, I think the place was clean and it was cleaned, but I think the previous resident had brought an animal there, so I was much better outside in the mountain air than I was inside the cabin. But what are you gonna do? Okay. The narrative of Diomedes. So remember, Diomedes was a Greek hero in the Trojan War, and he was super powerful. He had a lot of great scenes, duels by himself. He did a lot of adventures with Odysseus, and Diomedes was like heavily loved by Athena. Always got attention and just her aid in battle. So Diomedes says, after high Troy came down in fire, and the burned walls fed the Greek hunger, and after Ajax, Oileus' son, so the other Ajax, had ravished the virgin priestess and brought down upon us the virgin goddess's anger, made us all pay for what he alone had done, we were driven over the angry waters, under lightning, through storm and dark, the rage of sky and sea, until we reached Caphareus, the summit of all our woes. I can sum it up by saying that even Priam might have pitied us. So even the father of our enemies might have pitied us. Minerva saved me from the waves, of course she did, but I was driven once again from my home in Argos, and that was Venus's doing. She remembered the old wound I had given her. She took her vengeance, and on land and sea I suffered so much that over and over I called happy those who had drowned, and I wished I had been with them. So again, we're getting like lots and lots of little references to previous stories. So again, of course, Minerva, who was Athena in the Greek, Minerva saves Diomedes, because of course she does. And then he says that Venus was still mad at him because, if you remember back in the Iliad, in one of the craziest battle scenes when all of the gods are involved, Diomedes actually wounds Aphrodite, Venus here, and she didn't forget that, as you might imagine. My comrades too were weary, begged me end this wandering, but one of them named Acmon, hot-tempered anyway, and even more so from all we had been through, exclaimed in anger, "What is there left to bear, O patient heroes? What more can Venus do, even if she wants to? As long as there is something left to fear, there is room on us for wounds. But when the worst has happened, fear is trampled underfoot. We are at last secure, so let her hear us, let her hate us, and I know she does. But still, we scorn her hatred, and her great power stands, or does it, great before us." So did Acmon, insulting Venus, rouse her former anger. Only a few approved him, all the others, the most of us, rebuked him, and he tried to answer back, but both his voice and throat grew thin. His hair was feathers, and feathers covered his different neck and breast and back. His arms grew heavier plumage, and his elbows curved into light wing joints, and between his toes were webs, and his face grew hard like horn and ended in a sharp beak. They looked at him in wonder, Lycus and Idas, Nyctaeus, Rhexenor, and while they wondered, all of them were like him, flying and flapping their wings around the rowers. What kind of birds they were I could not tell you, something like swans, or at least of snowy color. And now, as Daunus's son-in-law, I have hard work enough with the few companions left me, holding this settlement in these dry acres. So you're gonna talk back to Venus. You're gonna get turned into birds. Yeah, as usual. So then we get the return of Venulus and the resumption of the wars, which I don't know if we need to read all of this part. So there's another ship that's turned to stone. We've seen that a couple times before. The war went on. Both sides brought in their gods to aid them, as they had another blessing, as good as any god. They had their courage. Not for a kingdom, dowry, a bride, or scepter they fought, but victory only. And the shame of losing kept them fighting. But at last Venus saw Turnus fall, and her son's arms victorious at last. And Ardea fell, a mighty town, while Turnus lived, but swords destroyed it, and warm ashes hid its ruins. And from that blackened heap a bird flew up, seen for the first time then, and beat its wings out of the soot. The sound it made, its thinness, its pallor, were symbols of a city conquered. And the bird keeps the city's name. Ardea means heron to some people. All right. So even a city turned into a bird. Well, the ashes of a city, at least. Okay. So now we're getting to the end of 14. And again, book 15 is the last one. So we have the deification of Aeneas. All the gods, even vindictive Juno, felt their anger come to an end. So mighty was the power Aeneas's goodness had. And since Iulus was well established in the sight of fortune, Venus's heroic son was ripe for heaven. So essentially, Aeneas he's done everything he needs to do as a hero. He's conquered, he's traveled far, he's met new people. He has another son who's going to take over, and now he can die, essentially. So this is Venus, Aeneas' mother, talking. She had gone to all the gods and thrown her arms around her father's neck, pleading, "Dear father, never unkind to me, indulge me now and grant to my Aeneas, your only grandson through me, some godhead, however lowly, so long as you grant something. It is enough once to have seen the realms no man can love, once to have passed across the Stygian river." The gods agreed, and even royal Juno was moved and gave assent. Jove spoke in answer. "You are worthy of heaven's gift. You both are worthy, you and your son. Receive what you have asked for." Venus rejoiced, gave thanks to Jove, soared high through the light air borne by her doves, and came to the Laurentian coast, where, through the beds of sheltering reeds, Numicius winds his river to the salt sea. She bade him purge Aeneas of all his mortal body, bear it down in silence to the ocean. He obeyed, and with his waters purified Aeneas of all his human dross, but what was best remained forever with him, and his mother sprinkled his body with a fragrant ointment, and touched his lips with nectar and ambrosia, made him a god, one whom the Roman people call Indiges, the native-born, and honor is paid his temple now, and sacrifice. So even in the time of Ovid writing this, there are, I mentioned this before, but the Romans especially, and the Greeks to a lesser extent, they had they were like the main pantheon of gods they worshipped, but then they had a bunch of like mini gods and deities for their town, their local area, even their house. There were literally things called household gods that you prayed to. So Aeneas sort of became one of those. Now we get the legendary history of Rome. Next, Alba and the Latin state came under Iulus, or Ascanius. We call him by either name. Then Silvius succeeded, whose son Latinus bears his name as heirloom of the old power. Then came famous Alba, Aegyptus next, then Capys and Capitus, then Tiberinus, who in drowning gave a river its name. His sons were Remulus and Acrota, the warlike. Remulus was older and the lightning killed him. Okay. Trying to imitate the lightning. I don't know that story, but it sounds interesting. Less audacious, Acrota turned the power and scepter over to Aventinus, who lies buried now on the hill where once he ruled, leaving his name as his memorial there. So if you've been to Rome or you know about Rome, Rome is the city of the seven hills, and one is the Aventine. So Aventinus was the ancient hero who then gave his name to the hill. And the next monarch was Procus, in whose reign the nymph Pomona tended her gardens and her lovely orchards. So we're going to skip over the story of Vertumnus. Let's skip over. Oh, there you go. Yeah, I mean there are a bunch of hills, and they all have their own names, and then they had their own roads, and of course lots of things later on. Okay, so we're going to skip over Vertumnus and Pomona, and we're going to go to more early Roman history. Next, false Amulius ruled the Ausonian state, but ancient Numitor, his grandson helping, captured back the kingdom he once had lost, and the city walls were founded on Pales' festival. Again, lots of references to other things here, but we're going to dive into more interesting stories. The Sabine fathers waged war. Thank you for the follow. Brun Runke. Oh, Battle Svet. Oh, interesting names. Okay, well, welcome. Thanks for the follows. If you're here for some Roman history and a reading of Ovid's Metamorphoses, oh boy, okay. Well, then enjoy. And if not, then I'm going to move this alert box. It's in the wrong place. Okay. All right. The Sabine fathers waged war with Tatius, and a girl, Tarpeia, betrayed the way to the citadel and paid the price of treason under the arms heaped on her. Then Curius' men, quiet as wolves, came stealing on Romans sunk in slumber toward the gates which Ilia's son had barred, and one of these, Juno herself, swung open. So even though we're talking about essentially, it's sort of like legendary history now we're into. So we're into events that maybe actually occurred, but there's still gods and sort of epic things going on in these stories. And even Juno herself is getting involved and helping to open the door. Venus saw it and would have closed it, but one god can never undo another's work. Is that true? Has that applied through all of these stories? I suppose once something bad happens to somebody, even that person's patron god or goddess can't undo it. But they do definitely contend with each other to get things done or undone. Near Janus's temple was where a cold spring ran cool. Ausonian naiads had made their place, and Venus went to them for help, and it was given. To that temple the path was always open. Water never had blocked the way before, but now the naiads placed yellow sulfur under the spring and heated the hollow veins with burning pitch, and steam boiled in the fountain till the alpine cold was hotter even than fire. The gateposts smoldered. The gate, swung open in vain, became a torrent no warrior could pass through, till the Romans had time for arms, and Romulus struck back, and soon the Roman plain was strewn with carnage, fathers and sons mingling their blood together. There was peace at last, and none too soon, and Tatius shared in the kingdom. So essentially, bad guys are trying to get in dark of night. Juno helps by opening the door. Venus sees this but can't stop it from happening, so she goes and she talks to the naiads. Naiads are water nymphs, usually tied specifically to a river or a stream or a pond, and then they put sulfur under the water, which makes it boil up, and all this water comes out and delays the bad guys just long enough for the proto-Romans here to grab their weapons and fight. And the laws were equal after his death, with Romulus as monarch, and Mars put off his gleaming helmet, pleading before the throne of Jove. The time has come, O Father, since the Roman state stands firm on strong foundations, not on one man's power, to keep the promise you made me and to bear him, your grandson Romulus, aloft to heaven. There was a council once, and all the gods were there, and I was there, and treasured in my heart your gracious words. There will be one whom Mars shall bear to the blue heaven. Let the promise now be redeemed in full. And Jove assented, hid all the sky in cloud, and filled the earth with thunder and with lightning. And Mars knew it, the sign to be of that transfiguration, Vaulted from spear to car, the black steed straining under the bloody yoke, and the lash sounding, as down the air he came to Palatine, another hill. And there, as Ilia's son was giving judgment with no tyrannical ordinance to his people, he caught him up from the earth, his mortal body dissolved into thin air, as a leaden bullet from the broad sling melts out of sight in its flying. And now a new and fairer form is given him, worthy the gods' high couches, and the robes for his new station, and he is called Quirinus. So the founding of Rome and all of these stories leading up to Rome being a thing, there are lots of, as you just saw, we just read about two of them, there are lots of characters who, they do important stuff, they do noble, heroic, famous things, and then the gods are like, he's got all this glory, he's done these great things for himself and for us, maybe he should become a god right now. And then they just sort of boink, pick him up and make him into a god. And we'll see why that's important in just a minute, but you might think, oh, well, if you have a society where people die suddenly or are assassinated and things like that happen, you might have reason to have stories about people suddenly being transfigured into gods after they've done great things here on Earth. Did anybody see? My camera just gave like it skipped a beat there. Weird. Are we still on? Can you still see me or hear me? Erdansk, of course the gods are reclining on couches. What do you think, they're just hanging out on the ground? Okay, cool. Yeah, it was weird. It went lost something. Okay. Yeah, and so Romulus, when he is pulled up to, okay, cool. Thank you. Hey, Hudsonizer, how you doing? So Romulus becomes a god, and he's renamed Quirinus. So he gets his own. He gets his own god name. That's fun. All right. Book 15, the final book of Ovid's Metamorphoses. Oh, thanks, Mom. The succession of Numa and the story of Mycellus. Good. Who could sustain that burden? Who succeed so great a king? So basically, who could come after Romulus? Fame, herald of the truth, selects the famous Numa for the throne. It was not enough for him to know the customs of Sabines only, for his generous spirit sought wider fields and general laws of nature. This passion led him far from his own town, Cures, on to Crotona, which once gave welcome to Hercules. And there King Numa asked who had been the founder of that city, Greek, on Italian soil, and one old man who knew the ancient legends gave the answer. Hercules, so men say, came from the ocean, enriched with Spanish oxen, and good luck brought him to this Lacinian coast, and here his cattle grazed on tender grass, and he entered great Croton's friendly house, and rested from his long labors. So as you can see here, we're mixing, we've got Greeks coming, they've stopped in Spain, or what will be Spain, what's Spanish at this point, coming to Italy. So we're connecting a bunch of the ancient world, which again, Rome will literally do by the time of Ovid, as the empire just grows and grows and grows. As he left, he said, "Here in the far-off future there will rise the city of your grandsons." It came true. In all that time the gods loved no man more than Mycellus, Alamon's son from Argos, and Hercules bent over him in slumber, saying, "Arise, leave your own land, and travel to Aesar's rocky channel." And he added threats, many and fearful, to compel obedience. He vanished then, and slumber left Mycellus, who rose, and in the silence saw the vision still bright, and felt a warfare in his heart. The god said, "Go!" The law said, "Stay." And death had been appointed as the punishment for leaving his own country. The bright sun had hidden his shining face beneath the ocean, and darkest night had raised her starry face from those same waters. Once again the gods seemed to be there, to give the same commands, only the warnings this time were more dreadful for disobedience. So again, we've got a cool, well, I think it's cool, a division between the sort of the laws of man and the laws of the gods. And what's more important, and what do you follow, even if the penalty for one is death? How do you decide which set of rules and which set of morality is more important? So yeah, he's very afraid. What do I do? And Mycellus, raising hands and gazed to heaven, cried out, "O God of the 12 great labors, help me! It was your urging put this crime upon me. In those old days it used to be the custom to vote by casting pebbles. Black for guilty, white for acquittal. And when the vote was taken in Mycellus's case, each pebble dropped into the urn was pitiless black. But when the urn was turned and the pebbles poured out for the count, the color of all was changed from black to white. So Hercules willed it, and Mycellus went free. He thanked his patron, Amphitryon's son, and with fair winds behind him, crossed the Ionian Sea, beyond Tarentum, Passibyrus, and Tarentum. Beyond Neritum, Passibyrus, and Tarentum, Cyrus's bay, Crimissa, the Iapygian coast, and found the mouth of Asar's channel, and a mound that held the consecrated bones of Croton. There, as the gods had been in it, he built his city walls, and named the town for the hero whose resting place was there. Such was the glory, such was the tradition of the city's founding. So that's the origin of the town of Croton. Not Crouton, but Croton. So then we're going to get the teachings of Pythagoras, a name you might have heard of. Let's see. There was a man here, Samian born, but he had fled from Samos, for he hated tyrants and chose instead an exile's lot. His thought reached far aloft, to the great gods in heaven, and his imagination looked on visions beyond his mortal sight. All things he studied with watchful, eager mind, and he brought home what he had learned and sat among the people, teaching them what was worthy. And they listened in silence, wondering at the revelations. Excuse me. How the great world began, the primal cause, the nature of things, what God is, whence the snows come down, where lightning breaks from, whether wind or Jove speaks in the thunder from the clouds, the cause of earthquakes, by what law the stars wheel in their courses, all the secrets hidden from man's imperfect knowledge. So again, I talked about this way in the beginning. I've mentioned it before, or ever since. So remember that myths are the first, well, one of the first, but the one of the ways in which people discover science, right? We're explaining, why is this thing happening? There must be a reason. I'm really afraid of it. If I give it a reason, I will understand it. It won't be as scary to me. So now we're getting like actual science that's sort of conflicting with what mythology tells you. But hey, it's secret knowledge, so we're gonna dive in and learn something. He was first to say that animal food should not be eaten, and learned as he was, men did not always believe him when he preached. Forbear, O mortals, to spoil your bodies with such impious food. There is corn for you, apples whose weight bears down the bending branches. There are grapes that swell on the green vines, and pleasant herbs, and greens made mellow and soft with cooking. There is milk and clover honey. Earth is generous with her provision, and her sustenance is very kind. She offers for your tables food that requires no bloodshed and no slaughter. Meat is for beasts to feed on, yet not all are carnivores, for horses, sheep, and cattle subsist on grass. But those whose disposition is fierce and cruel, tigers, Raging lions and bears and wolves delight in bloody feasting. Oh, what a wicked thing it is for flesh to be the tomb of flesh, for the body's craving to fatten on the body of another, for one live creature to continue living through one live creature's death. Absolutely, Eridan's Gap, vegetarians. And yet there were ancient people who were vegetarians. In all the richness that earth, the best of mothers, tenders to us, does nothing please except to chew and mangle the flesh of slaughtered animals? The Cyclops could do no worse. Must you destroy another to satiate your greedy, gutted cravings? There was a time, the Golden Age we call it, happy in fruits and herbs, when no men tainted their lips with blood, and birds went flying safely through air, and in the fields the rabbits wandered unfrightened, and no little fish was ever hooked by its own credulity. All things were free from treachery and fear and cunning, and all was peaceful. But some innovator, a good-for-nothing whoever he was, decided in envy that what lions ate was better, stuffed meat into his belly like a furnace, and paved the way for crime. It may have been that steel was warmed and dyed with blood through killing dangerous beasts, and that could be forgiven on grounds of self-defense. To kill wild beasts is lawful, but they never should be eaten. One crime leads to another. First the swine were slaughtered, since they rooted up the seeds and spoiled the season's crop. Then goats were punished on vengeful altars for nibbling at the grapevines. They both deserve their fate, but the poor sheep, what had they ever done? Born for man's service, but bring us milk, so sweet to drink, and clothe us with their soft wool, who give us more while living than they ever could in death. And what had oxen, incapable of fraud or trick or cunning, simple and harmless, born to a life of labor, what had they ever done? Hudsonizer, this is Pythagoras. So, yes, you may know him from math. The Pythagorean theorem, but he was a widely known, widely respected philosopher. He was a polymath. He knew a little bit about everything, and he's very, very strongly arguing for vegetarianism. Not veganism, because they do still have milk and things like that. So poor oxen. None but an ingrate, unworthy of the gift of grain, could ever take off the weight of the yoke, and with the axe strike at the neck that bore it. Kill his fellow, who helped him break the soil and raise the harvest. It is bad enough to do these things. We make the gods our partners in the abomination, saying they love the blood of bulls in heaven. So there he stands, the victim at the altars, without a blemish, perfect, and his beauty proves his own doom. In sacrificial garlands, horns tipped with gold, and hears the priest intoning. Not knowing what he means, watches the barley sprinkled between his horns, the very barley he helped make grow, and then is struck, and with his blood he stains the knife, whose flashing he may have seen reflected in clear water. Then they tear out his entrails, peer, examine, search for the will of heaven, seeking omens, and then, so great man's appetite for food forbidden, then, O human race, you feed, you feast upon your kill. Do not do this, I pray you, but remember, when you taste the flesh of slaughtered cattle, you are eating your fellow workers. Workers of the world, unite. Now, since the god inspires me, I follow where he leads, to open Delphi. To very heavens bring you revelation of mysteries, great matters never traced by any minds before, and matters lost or hidden and forgotten, these I sing. There is no greater wonder than to range the starry heights, to leave the earth's dull regions, to ride the clouds, to stand on Atlas's shoulders, and see far off, far down, the little figures wandering here and there, devoid of reason, anxious, in fear of death, and so advise them, and so make fate an open book. Well, Hudsonizer, there's a... Yeah, I mean, I don't tell you. Not all vegetarians are good. And not all vegetarians are good people, and not all good people are vegetarians. Let's see. So yeah, so basically he's going to go through and sort of shake the foundations of some popular thoughts. Let's see, next. Okay, well, here we go. O mortals, dumb in cold fear of death, why do you tremble at Stygian rivers, shadows, empty names, the lying stock of poets, and the terrors of a false world? I tell you that your bodies can never suffer evil, whether fire consumes them or the waste of time. Our souls are deathless. Always, when they leave our bodies, they find new dwelling places. I, myself, I well remember, in the Trojan War, was Panthus's son, Euphorbus, and my breast once knew the heavy spear of Menelaus. So here, he's saying that don't worry about dying, because we're just reincarnated as other people. I, myself, was somebody back in the Trojan War. Past lives remembered. Not long ago in Argos, Abys's city, in Juno's temple, I saw the shield I carried on my left arm. All things are always changing, but nothing dies. The spirit comes and goes, is housed wherever it wills, shifts residence from beasts to men, from men to beasts, but always it keeps on living. As the pliant wax is stamped with new designs and is no longer what once it was, but changes form, and still is pliant wax, so do I teach that spirit is evermore the same, though passing always to ever-changing bodies. So I warn you, lest appetite murder brotherhood, I warn you by all the priesthood in me, do not exile what may be kindred souls by evil slaughter. Blood should not nourish blood. So he's bringing it back to the vegetarianism argument that if we are reincarnated as different things, we also could be animals. Don't kill animals. So there. Let's see. Skipping over a little bit. So yeah, again, he's just going to touch on a bunch of different things. He's dropping knowledge bombs on ancient people for sure. Notice the year's 4 seasons. They resemble our lives. Spring is a nursling, a young child tender and young, and the grass shines and buds, swells with new life, not yet full grown nor hardy, but promising much to husbandmen, with blossom bright in the fertile fields. And then comes summer, when the year is a richly strong young man. No better time than this, no richer, no more passionate vigor than comes the prime of autumn. A little sober, but ripe and mellow. Moderate of mood, halfway from youth to age, with just a showing of gray around the temples. And then winter, tottering, shivering, bald or gray, and aged. Our bodies also change. What we have been, what we are now, what shall not be tomorrow. There was a time when we were only seed, only the hope of men housed in the womb, where nature shaped us, brought us forth, exposed us to the void air, and there in light we lay, feeble and infant, and were quadrupeds before too long, and after a little wobbled and pulled ourselves upright, holding a chair, the side of the crib, and strength grew into us, and swiftness, youth and middle age went swiftly down the long hill toward age, and all our vigor came to decline. So Milon, the old wrestler, weeps when he sees his arms, whose bulging muscles were once like Hercules's, and Helen weeps to see her wrinkles in the looking-glass. Could this old woman ever have been ravished, taken twice over? Time devours all things with envious age together. The slow gnawing consumes all things, and very, very slowly. Yikes. So even we go through metamorphoses as we age, as we experience different things. Not even the so-called elements are constant. Listen, and I will tell you of their changes. So again, pseudo-science, but still an attempt at science, an attempt at understanding and explaining the world around them. So we're talking about elements. There are 4 of them, and 2, the earth and water, are heavy, and their own weight bears them downward. And 2, the air and fire is purer even than air, are light, rise upward if nothing holds them down. These elements are separate in space, yet all things come from them and into them, and they can change into each other. Earth can be dissolved to flowing water, water can thin to air, and air can thin to fire, and fire can thicken to air again, and air condense to water, and water be compressed to solid earth. Nothing remains the same. The great renewer, nature, makes form from form, and oh, believe me, that nothing ever dies. What we call birth is the beginning of a difference, no more than that. And death is only ceasing of what had been before. The parts may vary, shifting from here to there, hither and yon, and back again, but the great sum is constant. So again, obviously we have like the crude idea of the 4 elements, but even in that idea, the quantum mechanics, exactly. But even that, we've got some hints of what is it? One of the laws of thermodynamics or whatever, and the laws of matter, right? Like nothing is ever actually gone. Things may change states, but matter and energy, matter and energy can't. Wait, what is it? How does it go again? I'm sure one of you knows. But yeah, you can't just create something out of nothing. The great sum is constant. It's always there somewhere. Conservation of energy and conservation of math. Thank you, Savage Punch. That is what I was looking for. Nothing, I am convinced, can be the same forever. There was once an age of gold, later an age of iron. Every place submits to fortune's wheel. I have seen oceans that once were solid land, and I have seen lands made from ocean. Often seashells lie far from the beach, and men have found old anchors on mountain tops. Boom! Yes, energy can be neither destroyed nor created. Conservation of energy should be the first law of thermodynamics. Okay, yeah, that's what I was trying to piece together. Emma, we are finishing the Ovid's Metamorphoses, and we're in a long chapter of Pythagoras rolling out all of his ancient wisdom to the people. You just missed a long screed about how we should all be vegetarians. It's very important. And yes, there were mountains in the ocean. And this is true, right? We do find seashells and all sorts of interesting fossils on the top of mountains even, because yes, the earth itself changes and shifts around. Let's see. Plateaus have turned to valleys, hills wash away, marshes become dry desert, desert made pools. Here nature brings forth fountains, there shuts them in. When the earth quakes, new rivers are born, and old ones sink and dry and vanish. Let's see. So he gives a couple of examples of waterways that have been created or closed up in mythology. Hold on one. Gardeners. Yeah, no incest in this chapter. Let's see here. Yeah, and just again relating more references to ancient cities that have moved around or gone up and down. Example on example, I could cite you so many more that I have seen or heard of. Just a few more. The element of water gives and receives strange forms. At midday, Ammon is cold, but warm in the morning and the evening. So again, he's giving... Again, it's all like rudimentary science. So now would we... And we wouldn't use examples as proof of some larger thing, but obviously that's what he's doing here. So he's looking at like specific stories and specific locations where maybe weird stuff happens, and using that as evidence for his wider claims here. And again, a lot of these have to do with changes and metamorphoses, you might say. The Athenians set wood on fire by pouring water on it in the dark of the moon, and the Ciconian people have a river they never drink, for they would turn to marble. Crathis and Sybaris in our own country turn hair the color of platinum or gold, and there are other streams, more marvelous even, whose waters affect the mind as well as body. You have heard about Salmachus. There are lakes in Ethiopia where a swallow of the water will drive you raving mad, or hold you rigid in catatonic lethargy. No man who likes his wine should ever drink from Clytor, or he would hate it. Something in that water, it may be, counteracts the heat of wine, or possibly, and so the natives tell us, Melampus, when he cured the maddened daughters of Proteus by his herbs and magic singing, threw in that spring mind-clearing hellebore, so that a hatred of wine stays in those waters. So again, there's a river that if you drink it, you don't like the taste of wine anymore. There's an opposite one as well. There are places where if you drink from it during the day, you're okay, but at night, you'll be sick. There are references to islands that once floated, now they don't move anymore. References to rocks that move in the water. Waterways that heat up, that get cool. So a lot of these kind of things. There's a lake where men who plunge 9 times into the chilly waters come out with downy feathers over their bodies. This I do not believe. Nor that the women of Scythia sprinkle their bodies with magic juices for the same purpose and effect. Okay, so there are some stories that are too crazy even to believe. Yeah, don't drink that water. However, there are stranger things that have been tried and tested, and these we must believe. You have seen dead bodies, rotten from time or heat, breed smaller creatures. Bury the carcasses of slaughtered bullocks chosen for sacrifice, and from the putrid entrails will come flying the flower-culling bees, whose actions prove their parenthood, for they are fond of meadows, are fond of toil, blah, 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 blah. So essentially, what he's saying is that we see this change in that life, you can't extinguish life, because if an animal is dead and left out to rot or dug up, it will spawn other creatures. And again, of course, we know that maggots and stuff infest bodies and other things come out, but to the ancient people, it's like, oh my god, look, we buried this animal after it was dead, and then we dug it up, and creatures are coming out of it, so there must be life. That was not an earthquake. Everything's fine. So again, life is, there's a cycle of life, and it never goes away. He got a lot of stories to talk about. And there's a story here that after horses are buried, if you dig them up, hornets come out of them. Cut a sea crab's claws, bury the rest of the body, and a scorpion comes from the ground. Okay. And worms that weave cocoons white on the leaves of the trees, as country people know well, turn into moths with death's head markings. So again, that's an actual metamorphosis that is correct. You get caterpillars that turn into moths or butterflies. The mud holds seeds that generate frogs. Legless at first, but the legs grow to swim with and then take long jumps with later. Okay, well that's also a metamorphosis. Not that there are frog seeds in mud, but that frogs definitely go through a metamorphosis from tadpole to frog. So that's a good metamorphosis to look at. quit while we're ahead, sure. And a bear cub, newborn, is not a bear at all, but only a lump, hardly alive, whose mother gives it a licking into shape, herself as model. So there's this, what the hell does that mean? So there's a thing that some ancient people thought, and it's super weird, that when you see animals give birth, very frequently the mother will lick clean the newborn. And it's just a natural process. It happens in a lot of animals. But there was this idea that what's actually happening is that the creature being born is formless. And again, like if a creature is birthed and it's just sort of curled up, like you can't really see what all is going on there. And it's the mother who is, the licking process is actually molding it and creating that actual shape to it. So again, not really a metamorphosis, but sure. He's trying to connect all these things in nature. This one's good. The larvae of the honey-bearing bees, safe in hexagonal waxen cells, are nothing but worm-like bodies. Feet and wings come later. Well, that's true. Who would believe that from an egg would come such different wonders as Juno's bird, the peacock, Jove's eagle, Venus's dove, and all the flyers? So that, okay, good. I mean, we have eggs that turn into all sorts of different birds. I mean, not all together. They're different, but sure. Yep, a bear is an amorphous blob upon birth. You heard it here, folks. So all these things have their beginning in some other creature, but there is one bird which renews itself out of itself. The Assyrians call it the phoenix. It does not live on seeds nor the green grasses, but on the gum of frankincense and juices of cardamom. It lives 5 centuries, as you may know, and then it builds itself a nest in the highest branches of a palm tree, using its talons and clean beak to cover this nest with cassia and spikes of spikenard, and cinnamon and yellow myrrh, and there it dies among the fragrance, and from the body a tiny phoenix springs to birth, whose years will be as long. The fledgling, gaining strength to carry burdens, lifts the heavy nest, his cradle and the old one's tomb, and bears it through the thin air to the city of the sun, and lays it as an offering at the doors of the sun god's holy temple. Okay. Yeah, that one's definitely more mythology than science, but sure. And then we get wonders. The same hyena can be male or female, to take or give the seed of life at its pleasure. If you're not familiar with hyenas and their sexual dimorphism, Google it. It's very interesting. And it is no wonder that ancient people were confused about how hyenas work. I'll leave it at that. Google it. Yes, we get some more things like that. All of the things that take new forms. Yeah, how do hyena? It is. Oh yeah, it's. Lady hyenas have extra parts. How do hyena? Let's see now. So that he's moving on. I mean, you might regret it, but it is very interesting. Very interesting. So moving on to, again, talk about the idea that change, things go from existing in one way to existing or not existing another way. I mean, look, it's just science. You should be able to Google it wherever you want. So the old ancestral tombs, Sparta, Mycenae, Athens, and Thebes, all flourished once, and now what are they more than names? I hear that Rome is rising out of Trojan blood, established on strong and deep foundations, where the Tiber comes from Apennines. I always have trouble with that one. Rome's form is changing, growing to greatness, and she will be someday head of the boundless world. So we are told by oracles and seers. I can remember when Troy was tottering ruinward, a prophet, Helenus, son of Priam, told Aeneas in consolation for his doubts and weeping, O son of Venus, if you bear in mind my prophecies, Troy shall not wholly perish while you are living. Fire and sword will give you safe passage through them. You will carry on Troy's relics till a land more friendly to you than your own native soil will give asylum. So again, we see things that are changing. Things get famous and powerful. They go down. And even Troy has changed now from being a massively powerful city to being destroyed, but it lives on through Rome. So much so that the Greek victory was to a good purpose for those Trojans. But after pages and pages and pages, we must not wander far and wide, forgetting the goal of our discourse. Remember this: the heavens and all below them, earth and her creatures, all change. And we, part of creation, also must suffer change. I mean, I feel like Ovid could have put this at the beginning of the book. But yes. We are not bodies only, but winged spirits, with the power to enter animal forms, house in the bodies of cattle. Therefore, we should respect those dwelling places which may have given shelter to the spirit of fathers, brothers, cousins, human beings at least, and we should never do them damage, not stuff ourselves like the cannibal Thyestes. So again, that animal, that cow that you're about to eat, could be your grandpa, or your brother, or just some other human being. An evil habit, impious preparation, wicked as human bloodshed, to draw the knife across the throat of the calf and hear its anguish cry to deaf ears. And who could slay the little goat whose cry is like a baby's, or eat a bird he is himself just fed? One might as well do murder. He is only the shortest step away. Let the bull plow, and let him owe his death to length of days. Let the sheep give you armor for rough weather. The she-goats bring full udders to the milking. Have done with nets and traps and snares and springs, bird-lime and forest beaters, lines and fish hooks. Kill, if you must, the beasts that do you harm, but even so, let killing be enough. Let appetite refrain from flesh. Take only a gentler nourishment. So there you go. Don't eat animals. Whatever you do, don't eat animals. If you have to kill an animal that's rampaging and doing bad stuff, that's fine. But don't eat it. Don't you eat it. Okay, you're all back from Googling hyena. It's very interesting. So let me get some of the other sort of heroes of ancient Rome, some more kind of odd transformations that aren't super interesting. So we're going to skip ahead to the deification of Caesar. Yeah, I mean, hyenas are fascinating, and yeah, it's kind of cool. It brings new shades to when you're dealing with things like gnolls and creatures that are based on hyenas in D&D and whatever other games. Other mythological, fantastical settings. The old god came to our shrines from foreign lands, but Caesar is God in his own city. First in war and first in peace, victorious, triumphant, planner and governor, quick risen to glory, the newest star in heaven, and more than this, and above all, immortal through his Son. No work in all of Caesar's great achievement surpassed this greatness, to have been the father of our own emperor, to have tamed the Britons, surrounded by the fortress of their ocean, to have led a proud victorious armada up seven-mouthed Nile, to have added to the empire rebel Numidia, Libya, and Pontus, arrogant with the name of Mithridates, to have had many triumphs, and deserved many more triumphs. This was truly greatness, greatness surpassed only by being father of one yet greater, one who rules the world as proof that the immortal gods have given rich blessing to the human race, so much so we cannot think him mortal, our Augustus. Therefore our Julius must be made a god to justify his son. So talking about how, like, Julius Caesar did some amazing things, conquered a lot of people, but his greatest achievement, of course, was being father to Augustus, who is assuredly a god for all the amazing stuff he did. And Golden Venus saw this, and saw as well the murder plotted against her priest, the assassins in their armor, and she grew pale with fear. "Behold," she cried to all the gods in turn, "behold what treason threatens me with its very weight. What ambush is set to take Iulus' last descendant? Must this go on forever? Once again the spear of Diomedes strikes to wound me. The walls of Troy fall over me in ruins. Once more I see my son, long wandering, storm-tossed, go down to the shades, and rise again to war with Turnus, or to speak more truly, with Juno. It is very foolish of me to dwell on those old suffering, for my present fear has driven them from my mind. Look, do you see them whetting their evil daggers? Avert this crime before the fires of Vesta drown in their high priest's blood." So we're conflating, obviously, Roman history with Julius Caesar and the plot to assassinate him with Venus and sort of all of her stories going back, and how Venus was one of the patron goddesses of Troy, and then through Aeneas, now she becomes a patron goddess of Rome, and so on and so forth. The anxious goddess cried these complaints through heaven, and no one listened. The gods were moved, and though they could not shatter the iron mandates of the ancient sisters, the fates, they still gave certain portents of the evil to come upon the world. In the dark storm clouds, arms clashed and trumpets blared, most terrible, and horns heard in the sky warned men of crime, and the sun's visage shone with lurid light on anxious lands. Firebrands were seen to flash among the stars. The clouds dripped blood. Rust color blighted the azure morning star, and the moon rode in a blood-red car. The Stygian owl wailed in 1,000 places. Ivory statues dripped tears in 1,000 places, and wailing traveled the holy groves, and threats were heard. No victim paid expiation, and the liver warned of desperate strife to come. The lobe found cloven among the entrails. So basically, every kind of omen you can imagine was happening. The sky was turning red. Animals that were sacrificed and cut open. There was all sorts of weird stuff in there. In the marketplace, around the homes of men and the gods' temples, dogs howled by night, and the shadows of the silent went roaming, and great earthquakes shook the city. No warning of the gods could check the plotting of men, avert the doom of fate. Drawn swords were borne into a temple. Nowhere else in the whole city was suitable for murder, save where the Senate met. Then Venus beat her breast with both her hands and tried to hide him, her Caesar, in a cloud, as she had rescued Paris from Menelaus, as Aeneas fled Diomedes' sword. And Jove spoke to her. "My daughter, do you think your power alone can move the fates no power can ever conquer? Enter the home of the three sisters. There you will see the records, on bronze and solid iron, wrought with tremendous effort, and no crashing of sky, no wrath of lightning, no destruction shall make them crumble. They are safe forever. There you will find engraved on adamant the destinies of the race, unchangeable. I have read them and remembered. I will tell you so you may know the future. So now again, we're getting the fates. The fates have decided all. You cannot change them. So referring to Julius Caesar specifically, he has finished the time allotted him, this son you grieve for. His debt to earth is paid, but he will enter the heaven as a god and have his temples on earth as well. This you will see fulfilled, will bring about you and his son together. He shall inherit both the name of Caesar and the great burden, and we shall help him this is talking about Augustus, rather. And we shall both help him avenge his father's murder. Under him, Mutina's conquered walls will sue for mercy. Pharsalia know his power, and Philippi run red with blood again, and one more Pompey go down to death in the Sicilian waters. A Roman general's Egyptian woman, foolish to trust that liaison, will perish for all her threats that our own capital would serve Canopus. Need I bring to mind barbarian lands that border either ocean? Whatever lands men live on, the world over, shall be his to rule, and the seas also. So again, we're getting all of these prophecies about what Augustus will do. He will defeat Pompey, he'll defeat Cleopatra, obviously. And when peace comes to all the world, his mind will turn to law and order, civil justice, and men will learn from his sublime example. And he, still looking forward toward the future, the coming generations, will give order that his good wife's young son should take his name, his duty when he lays the burden down, blah, 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 blah. Now, in the meantime, from the murdered body, raise up the spirit, set the soul of Julius as a new star in heaven to watch over our marketplace, our capital. He ended, and Venus, all unseen, came to the temple, raised from the body of Caesar the fleeting spirit, not to be lost in air, but borne aloft to the bright stars of heaven. As she bore it, she felt it burn, released it from her bosom, and saw it rise beyond the moon, a comet, rising, not falling, leaving the long fire behind its wake, and gleaming as a star. And now he sees his son's good acts, confessing they are greater than his own, for once rejoicing in being conquered. But the son refuses to have his glories set above his father's. Fame will not heed him, for she heeds no mortal, exalts him much against his will, resists him in this one instance only. So now we're talking about sons surpassing their fathers. So must Atreus defer to Agamemnon, so does Theseus surpass Aegeus, and Achilles Peleus, and, one more instance where the father's glory yields to the sons, Saturn is less than Jove. Jove rules the lofty citadels of heaven, the kingdoms of the triple world, but earth acknowledges Augustus. Each is father as each is lord. O gods, Aeneas' comrades, to whom the fire and sword give way, I pray you, and you, O native gods of Italy, Quirinus, father of Rome, and Mars, the father of Rome's unconquered sire, and Vesta, honored with Caesar's household gods, Apollo, tended with reverence as Vesta is, and Jove, who's blah, 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 blah. However many whom the poet's longing may properly invoke, far be the day, later than our own era, when Augustus shall leave the world he rules, ascend to heaven, and there, beyond our presence, hear our prayers. So sort of turning all of this into a prayer for the gods to honor and support Augustus for as long as he shall live. And then we get the epilogue. Very short. Now I have done my work. It will endure, I trust, beyond Jove's anger, fire and sword, beyond time's hunger. The day will come, I know, so let it come, that day which has no power save over my body, to end my span of life, whatever it may be. Still, part of me, the better part, immortal, will be born above the stars. My name will be remembered wherever Roman power rules conquered lands. I shall be read, and through all centuries, if prophecies of bards are ever truthful, I shall be living always. Oh, that's so cool. So he lives on thousands of years later, and we're still reading it. Oh, so good. So good. What humility. Yeah. And that, friends, is the end of Ovid's Metamorphoses. This one gives a little index afterward, but obviously that's just for looking up stuff. Well, it took a while to read through this book, but I think it's great. It touches on so many different things, so many little stories that only appear here, that definitely, like, ancient people knew these stories, but not everybody wrote them down. So we get them out of this. And it is cool how it dovetails right at the very end, but into actual history of Rome. And yeah, like I was saying, leading into that last chapter there, we get some other stories of heroes who, they did their great works, and then the gods, yoink, pick them up and turn them into gods themselves, and that happened with Julius Caesar. So we set the stage for that. Excuse me. So Ovid is done. Where are we going from here? What is next for Mythology Mondays? Well, I'll tell you, I was looking at some other options, looking into other mythological pantheons and stories that I haven't done a lot with. And they're not, unfortunately, some of the other ones, they're not so cut and dried, and it's kind of annoying. The Greeks and Romans were very lucky in that, well, number one, they had so many stories, and they were written down pretty early on and copied, and then, they were preserved. Not in all cases. We know there was lots more that wasn't preserved. But other mythologies were not so lucky. So, for instance, I was looking up Egyptian mythology, and there wasn't a lot written down. Because when it comes to mythologies, I really like to read original sources, because that's where the real stuff is. And of course, it's translated, and it's it comes down through other forms of writing and other cultures who are translated it like that. But still, so like Egyptian mythology, like there's not a lot of there's almost nothing contemporaneous. There's what Romans were writing about Egyptian religion later on, and like the original stuff is really dry. So I'm always looking for, again, like those original voices to read and talk about. So Egyptian, not so easy, but I'm looking at a couple of other things. I'm looking into what did I hit upon last night that was promising. Oh, Irish. There's some interesting Irish mythologies and some like old texts. Oh, and then I was looking at some of the Sanskrit epic poems, which are amazing, but they're like 50,000 pages long. So there are stories in there. I mean, we could pick out stories, especially from the Ramayana, which are fun and interesting. Like especially when you get to Hanuman and the apes. So I'm still looking around. So when you come back here on next Monday, a week from today, for Mythology Monday, I don't know exactly what we'll be talking about, but I promise you it'll be interesting and hopefully wacky and wild. Rabid Wombat, you think you technically helped write some mythology? Well, that's cool. Yeah, it's tough when you, again, especially with the Egyptians, when you look at a culture that they didn't... Egyptian writing wasn't what we think of as, there was... Most of their writing was more technical, and rather than... It wasn't a lot of prose and poetry and that kind of stuff. And it's... Yeah. Some are just more difficult to get those original voices, what they really thought of. But that will take us to the end of today's lesson. Oh my god, what's happening here? Weird. Twitch is giving me some really weird stuff right now. Stupid nonfiction writers, yeah. You made a weird Bigfoot knockoff. That's cool. Yeah, but like I said, we'll I'll find something good. Something good. Who else is on right now? Anybody worth rating? Anybody I hold in such a high esteem that I would suggest to you, my awesome loyal viewers, should go and watch. Let me take a look real quick. This week we'll have all of the usual stuff. So a Dune stream this afternoon with Jessica. I cannot promise you what will happen on that stream. Again, if you watched last week, oh boy. We did do some reading. Some Dune was read. There was lots of other stuff that happened as well. I mean, Galactus might make another appearance today. I don't know. There might be more interesting challenges that Jessica and I have to do. I promise nothing other than that you will be entertained. I'm confident in making that promise. Let's see. It's not happening. Yeah, we did read a solid chunk last week, and then there was some reading that happened. At the beginning, maybe? I don't know. Lots of silly things happened. Let's check out. I think it was more than just a bit. Anyway, yes, some wild things happened during that stream, if you missed it. Songs were sung. I may or may not have sent a direct message to Belle Delphine. It was some wacky, wild stuff. Degeneracy followed. Yes, degeneracy. That's a good word. Nah. I've decided nobody online right now is worth your viewership. No, I'm kidding. But I'm just gonna end the stream and not raid because I need to get going. And I always feel weird about raiding and then not being able to stick around. I don't know. It's just me. So yes, today there may or may not be more degeneracy, or it might be Dune reading. You never know what happens when you show up at 5 p.m. Pacific on... Oh, did John just come on? Okay, cool. On Jessica's channel for Dune. I'll put that in quotation marks. Okay. Let's go to see John, if John is actually on. Was he listening and then went to start? That would be pretty good. And then, like I said, usual stuff this week, except on... Oh, yeah, John is on. Cool. Friday. We have something going on early in the morning on Friday, so I don't know if my stream will start right on time, but it should definitely be happening, even if it might be starting a little late. And, yeah, I don't think there's anything else weird happening this week. Okay, hold on. Loading up the raid command right now. So thanks everybody for hanging out, finishing Ovid's Metamorphoses with me. And, oh my god, come on. Come on. No, you're still not gonna... I should probably just learn what the actual command is so I can just type it in rather than have to go and pull up this menu that takes forever. Okay, I got it. Okay, cool. So thanks everybody. Come and check out Jessica's stream today, Dune, and I'll see y'all later. Bye-bye.